Iowa. Today we're taking a break from the Gospel of Mark. This summer we're doing a little bit more freestyle preaching, you could say. We're just preaching what God puts on our hearts. And today we're going to be in Psalm 72, and we're going to be talking about God's heart for the needy. So before we do that, though, let's pray. God, thank you for this gathering of people, Lord. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your provision for our lives, God. Thank you that you are a God who's met our needs, our physical needs, our spiritual needs. Lord, right now I just pray that you would reveal to us, God, your heart for the needy, God. That you would show us who you are through this, God. This isn't about us or about anything, but just you speaking to us through the word, Lord. So we just pray for that. We come before you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So we're talking about a king for the needy. And growing up in a stable suburban family in the suburbs, I obviously am an expert on being in need, right? Not really. I'm not. I always lived in two-story houses. I only had to share a room with my brother one time. And even that time, we had this awesome attic loft thing going on. We had a little side room for our video games. I was never without food. In high school, I think I lived mainly off of Hot Pockets and Mountain Dew. That was my diet. And Ho-Hos when I had change for the vending machine. So I didn't really know anything about need, other than maybe needing some cash to go to a movie. And when I needed cash to go to a movie, I knew who to ask. Mom was the weak one. So I always asked Mom. And she'd always come up with it for me. I couldn't ask Dad. He's like, no, get a job. Get out of here. But I could always ask Mom. And for larger endeavors, I could always count on Grandma. So she was always there. I was never really in need. But when I was in high school, I went with my youth group on a mission trip to Mexico. And while we were there, we got to go to a camp where a lot of poor people lived. These were kind of the lowest people on the rung of the society there. We got to this camp, and we saw just tarps. We saw awnings and just tarps. They weren't even fully enclosed. It was just like 3 walls. So they were open, and there was probably 4 of these little tent-like structures and maybe 80 to 100 people living in them. Some people told me that these people were considered an inferior race in society, and so they were basically treated poorly. They worked menial jobs. They were working in the fields, and they were just looked down on in that culture. We brought the kids balloons, and we brought a couple of new soccer balls. And, man, they were just so thankful. The kids' faces lit up. They were excited to see us and kick the soccer ball around. And later I heard that after we left, they thought the older kids would go and take those soccer balls. We also brought bags of rice and beans and gave it to the people there, and they were very grateful. And I remember one of the bags of beans spilled, and where we're at, just dirt floors, dirt everything. And I remember one guy just going down and trying to pick up every single bean that had fallen in the dirt. And, I couldn't really process what I saw. Couldn't really come to grips with what I saw. It didn't hit me that these people lived all the time without all the stuff that I took for granted. That these people saved every bean that fell in the dirt, while I purposely didn't eat my beans when we had them for dinner. These people lived under tarps, and it's not like they could lock their doors at night. They were vulnerable. I mean, they were vulnerable. They lived without any sort of, protection. I can't imagine as a father trying to protect your family in that kind of environment. We forget often that this is how most of the world lives. Most of the world lives almost half the world lives on less than $2.50 a day, which I spent $3 on a coffee this morning, so I'm not feeling so good about that. 80% live on less than $10 a day. 80% of the world lives on less than 10. And half of the world's children, 1 billion, live in poverty. 22,000 children die every day because of poverty. That's almost double the size of Ferndale, to put that in perspective. And we've heard statistics like that. We know that our world is full of need. We know that need is everywhere. But that doesn't mean that need is just over there. We also know that need is here. Need is in our county. I recently picked up a high schooler to play basketball. A group of us guys play basketball on Monday nights, and I picked him up, and on the way home, he pointed out that he lives out in the county, and he pointed out, hey, there's a homeless community next door to my property. I couldn't see it. It was dark, but when I came back later on, I saw, sure enough, like in the woods, there's tarps set up. It totally reminded me of that time I was in Mexico. Tarps hung up in the back and laundry on the line. Another day out in the county, head into a fishing hole. A friend and I find a woman sleeping in her car. I don't know how long she had been there, but it looked like a while. So need is everywhere. It's global. It's in the city. It's in the country. And need doesn't necessarily mean homelessness. Need can just mean a desperate situation. We all have friends in need. Maybe you have friends who are living in an abusive relationship or an abusive marriage, and they need a way out. Maybe it's a single mom or a single dad who doesn't have any connections, who's lonely and trying to raise kids and provide for them. Maybe it's a friend who's been out of a job and about to lose everything. I think we all know someone in need. Maybe you come here today with a sense of desperation, with a sense of need that you need someone to show up and come through in your situation. So that said, let's turn to Psalm 72. We're going to be in Psalm 72. So Psalm 72 is a prayer of King Solomon. You know the rich guy, King Solomon? You probably remember him as the king who asked God for wisdom. God gave him the keys. He said, Solomon, you can ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you. Whatever is on your heart, I will provide. You remember what Solomon asked for? This is what it says. It says that he asked for an understanding mind to govern the people, so that he could discern between good and evil. Solomon could have had whatever he wanted, but he took his position so seriously, and he took his time so seriously that he just asked for an understanding mind, that he'd be able to discern good and evil according to God's heart. So in this prayer, we find a king who's driven to rule according to what God wants. A king who's driven to be concerned about what God's concerned about. You know, often when a new king, or we don't really have kings here, right? We have presidents. So when a new king or a president or a ruler comes to power, everybody holds their breath. Like, oh no. Because there's this unknown. What is going to happen to our country? What's going to happen to our land? How will this king treat people? Will he truly care for people, or will he exploit them? Will he use his office for his own gain? Would the nation under his reign experience fruitfulness and blessing, or would it be a time of corruption and poverty? Solomon knew that how he governed mattered. He knew that how he governed made a difference for everyone in the land. So let's start in verse 1. Solomon prays, "Give the king your justice, O God. and your righteousness to the royal son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. Let the mountains bear prosperity for the people and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, giving deliverance to the children of the needy, and crush the oppressor. So the first thing we see in this prayer is that we have a king concerned for his people. He's concerned that he would rule in a right way, that ruling in righteousness is that he would judge people in the correct way, that he'd see through God's eyes when he looked at the people. Solomon saw him, especially at the beginning of his reign, more as just a channel for God to work through than a king. We don't sense in the beginning a lot of pride from Solomon, but more that he's submitting to God. And wouldn't that be great if all our rulers saw themselves as channels for God? That we're just trying to live and govern people and judge people according to how God sees them and what God wants. So we see a king that is concerned for his people, and he's specifically concerned about the needy. He prays specifically for them to receive justice. He sees that the needy people are the ones who are in the most need of justice. They're in the most need of someone to stand up for them. He refers to the needy as, in this psalm, the poor of the people, children, the children of the needy, the ones who have no helper, the weak, and the oppressed. So when you look at this type of person, this is a person who doesn't have resources, is not valued by the world. He doesn't have connections. This is a person without connections, without a backup plan. The needy included children. Children are vulnerable, aren't they? Children are the most vulnerable of the needy because their whole life is dictated by someone else. Their whole life is dictated by their parents. And we, as moms and dads, we have an incredible responsibility for our kids. And as we see in Solomon's heart, he wasn't just concerned about his own kids, but those kids who didn't have stable families, didn't have security at home. Susan Fiske is a psychology professor at Princeton, and she said this. She said that Americans treat the poor with disgust. It's the most negative prejudice people report, even greater than racism. That for some reason, poverty is like the great scourge in the U.S. In Seattle, even. I read an article recently about how they designed their park benches so that people couldn't sleep on them. That they actually designed their park benches with, 2 bars on the side and then one in the middle, because they didn't want people sleeping on the benches. They didn't want to encourage homeless people to hang out there. And so we see that often it's easy for us to dismiss the poor, to dismiss the homeless, to fall into this value system, the world's value system, how they look at the poor. We often don't take the time to listen to their story. We don't see that they are human and they're valuable to God, and we don't take the time to listen to their story, to ask, because we're busy or lazy or whatever. One of the best lunches I ever had was an impromptu lunch. Bonnie and I were at Walmart, and we just happened to meet these 2 homeless guys, and we asked them to come to lunch. And we just listened to their story, and they were cracking jokes and telling us their story and talking about family and kids. And one homeless guy elbows his buddy and is like, yeah, these guys are Christians, you really need to get right with Jesus. And it was just really interesting. It was really good. The guy gave me gave me advice on how to deal with my father-in-law, which was awesome. I need as much of that as possible. So I know a lot of you guys have good advice that you could give me. But yeah, oftentimes we dismiss people because they don't have anything that we value. We don't take the time to get to know them because we live in an economic society that asks, what can you offer me? You can't read the Bible and miss God's concern for the needy. You just can't. It's all over the Bible. In the Old Testament alone, there are 200 references to God's concern and care for the poor. I mean, it's pretty clear. In Deuteronomy 15, God tells the nation of Israel that there will be no poor among you if you strictly obey my voice. He commands them that if someone becomes poor, that you shall not harden your heart against your poor brother, but you shall open your hand to him and lend sufficient to his need, whatever it may be. He commands them, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to the needy and to the poor in your land. Whoa, that is challenging. But we see that, that's consistent with the New Testament too. God's telling people, sell your possessions, give to the poor. We see that Jesus is concerned about the poor. And so when we come and we hear Solomon's prayer, we see that Solomon is praying consistent to God's heart. That God's heart is that his people would care for the poor, because God's heart is that the poor would be delivered. You'll notice that in verse 3, Solomon talks about prosperity. Let the mountains bear prosperity, and the hills. Now, the mountains and the hills in that time were not where the rich folks lived. The rich folks had the good land, down in the valley, the fertile soil. The hills and the mountains, that's where the poor folks lived. You remember those lowly shepherds? That's where they took their flocks, was the hills. They didn't value, scenic views quite as much as we do now. But yeah, so we see that God has this heart that prosperity would be for all people, that prosperity would be brought for the poor. We see that Solomon is concerned about their prosperity. But the needy here, they don't just need someone to be concerned about them. They don't just need someone to feel guilty about them. They need someone to respond. And so this is where it gets exciting. We see in this psalm that the king is not just going to be concerned, but he's going to respond for the needy. He's going to respond for the needy as one of the needy. He doesn't separate themselves from their need, but sees that the land's prosperity is directly tied into how they treat the poor. The king does not separate himself from that. So you see Solomon, he cries out to God for this heart of action, that he would defend the cause of the poor, that he would crush the oppressors. Basically, this is good news. If you're living in an oppressive state, this is good news that justice is coming, that the king will bring justice, that the king will fight. If you're needy, if you're desperate, this is good news. So through God's strength, the king will defend the cause of the poor. He will be the connection for those who don't have connections. He will be the resource for those who don't have resources. Solomon wrote in Proverbs 14:20 that the poor is despised even by his own neighbors, but the rich have many friends. People reject those who don't have anything to offer them. Instead of seeing all of us as equally valuable to God, we let that world economy get in the way. And so Solomon is praying that he would use his position of power to stand up for those people who are despised by society. And through God's strength, that he would bring deliverance to the children, that he would bring deliverance for the children of the needy. We talked about how vulnerable they are, how children can be easily manipulated. Well, Solomon wants to take action. Solomon wants to bring prosperity for those kids who don't have anything. He wants to bring peace and a sense of security for those kids who don't have that peace or security. And through God's strength, the king will crush the oppressor. That's pretty strong language. In Scripture, you don't see much that angers God more than when the needy get exploited. I had a friend who didn't have a whole lot. He worked as a painter, and he worked for his brother one summer. He worked for his brother, painting houses, and painting obviously is seasonal work. So he goes to his brother and he asks him, hey, I know painting's seasonal. Why don't you just pay me less during the busy time and then just keep paying me into the winter, and that would really help my family. And so the brother agrees. And so they work, and it's hard work, and it's long hours, and they work hard during the busy season. And during that time, my friend gets his paychecks. When that busy season ends, the paychecks stop. And he's like, hey, listen, I got a family, we're related, what's going on here? And the brother's like, I don't have money, I can't, I'm not gonna pay. And so my friend is just shocked. And he can't really do anything. He can't really pursue legal action because he doesn't have the resources. And he doesn't, and it's family. This is his brother who's doing this, so he doesn't want to take his brother to court or demand it or anything like that. So instead, his family suffered through the whole winter. God provided some. He went to his landlord and told him what was going on, and his landlord was understanding to him and let him off. But, we know that this kind of exploitation exists all around the world. It happens here. It happens in other countries. If you don't have anything, you don't have a lot of options. So let's continue on. Let's read in verse 5. Solomon says, "May they fear you while the sun endures, as long as the moon, throughout all generations. May he be like a rain that falls on the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish and peace abound, till the moon be no more." So the king, we see he desires that his reign would be refreshing to everyone. They're like, oh, finally, here's someone who cares. Here's someone who's going to take care of everybody. It's like rain for the grass. We might not find rain so refreshing. We might look at rain in disgust. But I have a friend who lives out in eastern Oregon. He loves rain. I don't get it. He loves rain. But 300 days a year it's sunny. So anytime there's a rain break out there, it's like, oh, heaven's opened. I remember one time I was in Omaha and it hadn't rained for 30 days, and then the day I was there visiting, it starts raining, and there was literally a guy in the street like, oh. So and we know in Israel it's a desert climate, arid climate, so rain is really refreshing. And so Solomon wants his rule and the way that he governs to be refreshing for the people. And and for the people to experience prosperity and peace. That God's peace, God's shalom would rule over their lives. That everyone would be treated fairly, that there wouldn't be corruption. His reign would be good news for everyone, those who had means and those who didn't. But as we read on, the scope of this king and this kingdom widens. When I first read it, it kind of threw me off. Is Solomon just talking about Solomon? Or is there another king and another kingdom that he's referring to? Let's read verse 8. May he have dominion from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. May the desert tribes bow down before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of the coastlands render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts. May all kings fall down before him, and all nations serve him. Wait just a minute, okay? I don't think this is just talking about Solomon. I think this might also be talking about another king that's to come. Any guesses? Anybody? Hey, all right. Yes, Jesus. I think he's foreshadowing Jesus. That this psalm talks about Solomon's reign, but it also foreshadows the reign of Solomon's descendant, who would be Jesus, who would be a king of kings, who would come and bring in a new kingdom, a new way of doing life, salvation for everybody. That's what we're foreshadowing here. And what really strikes me is if we read on, we see why this new king deserves such praise and a signal for his kingdom. That this would be a signal for his kingdom. For he delivers the needy when he calls, the poor and him who has no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and he saves the lives of the needy. From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight. Jesus is a king for needy people. Jesus is a king for needy people. When he comes, he's going to deliver. And when he came, he delivered everyone who called on him, right? That includes us. He defends those who can't defend themselves. He spent his time among the poor. He actually became poor, depending on other people as he proclaimed his kingdom. He healed people. He healed the blind man and the deaf man and the crippled man and all those other men and women, the leper, everybody. He healed. His kingdom came when Jesus announced his kingdom, and it was like everyone flocked because he was a man healing and proclaiming good news to everyone. And when we step up for someone in need, we represent that king and that kingdom. When we give, when we build relationships with people who are lonely, who don't have anything, who are begging for someone they can share their story with, we represent that king. When we go out of our way to help and to give, we represent our king. When we adopt children in need, we represent our king. And you could be sitting here and you could be thinking, like, this is good, but, like, what about me? What about my situation? You know, we're talking a lot about the needy, and maybe you just are not feeling like you have a lot of connection with the needy or whatever. But the fact is that the truth of the gospel is that we are all needy. The truth of the gospel is that we are all needy, that we have absolutely nothing before God, that we have nothing to bring before God, that when we come to God, we come with open hands and our lives, and that's it. We offer up our lives, and we can't make God owe us anything. We can't work hard enough. We can't do anything that God would consider valuable. We can just come to him and ask for him to deliver us. Ask him to crush our oppressors. Ask him to free us from what enslaves us. You know, when Jesus preaches the Beatitudes, the first Beatitude is blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. To come to God, to come into the kingdom, we have to be poor in spirit. We have to recognize that we're needy all the time, that we have nothing, that our works are nothing to God. There's nothing we can do. If there was something we could do, that would be a religion, right? That wouldn't be a gospel. If there was something we could do and say, look, God, I did this, And that should look really good to you, so you owe me, right? No, that's not the gospel. There's not anything like that. It's more of a desperation. It's a desperation cry. We come to God, we realize, God, I have nothing. Even the stuff I have, I'm going to lose. It's all you. This hit me like a ton of bricks this week, because I realized that a lot of times I live like I'm rich in spirit. I realize that I live like I have something to offer God. I justify myself with the good things I do, and I way overestimate myself, and that's just self-righteousness. That's self-righteousness. When we come to God, we come needy, we come desperate, we come blind. Our life in Christ is all dependent on God. So it's more of our postures. It's more of a posture of dependence. We can't make ourselves perfect. We can't make ourselves give stuff up or give away things. It has to be God through us. And that only comes through desperation and to surrender to his kingdom. And then, when we realize our neediness, it becomes way easier to connect with other people's neediness, because we're all the same. We're all needy. We all don't have much to give. I can't give anyone anything except Jesus. And we can open our hearts and open our hands and say, yeah, take it. I've been given so much, and I want to give to you. There was a pastor that I had a chance to meet from Austin, Texas, and he wrote a book called The Barefoot Church. And this is a really good book if you're looking for a good book on serving the least and serving the needy. This would be a good resource. He said he had been a pastor at a large church in Texas, and this church was huge. They had like 6 services. And he remembers one Easter morning, God had been working on he and his wife's heart, that he would serve among the least, that he'd be more about the least in the city. And so after plowing through 6 Easter services, they go to a small church, or they went and visited a small church downtown in Austin, one that has a connection with people in need. And what he does is him and his wife go and they worship, and they just talked about how great that worship experience was. Just being among these people and worshiping from the heart in this small little gathering. And he just described how great that was. And then he said during that worship time he had this vision. God gave him this vision. God gave him a vision of a homeless man who reached out his hand and said, "Give me your boots." And in Texas, boots are a big deal, I guess. I don't know. No, I hear they're a big deal. And his immediate response was, "They won't fit." And the homeless man says, "No, they will. They will." And so he thought about this in his heart, that his boots cost 4 times more than any other pair of shoes that he had ever owned. Anyone who has like cowboy boots here knows they're pretty spendy. Like he and his wife had purchased these boots for each other for Christmas, and so he's wrestling with this, and then later, a speaker gets up and he starts talking about this homeless or this church with a large homeless population or a large homeless contingent of their congregation. And he started talking about how they needed sturdy shoes, how they needed boots, because the homeless people were on their feet all day. They didn't, they needed something sturdy, and usually what they got was either old or it was used. It was either, those are 2 of the same words. It was either used or new and really cheap. There you go. Okay. So he's like, we really need some sturdy shoes. And then as they continued on in worship, he said the Spirit fell. And both he and his wife took their boots off and went and they laid him up at the front of the altar. They let go of the boots. And they went back to their seats barefoot. Pretty soon, other people were doing the same thing. They were taking their shoes off, and they were putting it at the foot of the altar. He said he wished he had worn cheaper shoes that day. In his heart, right? So anyways, you have this whole pile of shoes at the end of this church service saying, "Here, God, take this. Give it to those who don't have good shoes." And he said the most amazing thing to see was when that church walked out barefoot. And that's Barefoot Church. The church walks out barefoot, willing to lay down whatever for the kingdom. And so that story really struck me. When we live for the kingdom, we don't live for our peace and prosperity now, but we look forward to peace and prosperity in the future. We know that a king is coming, that the king will come again and establish a kingdom without pain. Moth and rust won't destroy anything. That's where we should be investing. That's where our hope is. When we live with that in mind, it makes it a lot easier to take our boots off and put them at the altar. Because we serve a God who cares. He cares about our need, and he cares about the need of people who don't have anything. He defends their cause. He delivers their children. He crushes their oppressors because he loves them. They're precious to him. We're precious to him. And whoever is precious to God should be precious to us. Whoever God values, we should value. And so we should think about, pray about, consider how we can show compassion to those in need. On a personal level, who in your life could use your help right now? Who in your life is God calling you to give something to? We can do this on a local level. There are amazing people doing amazing things all over this county. We have people plugged in to the food bank. We have people plugged into Rebound of Whatcom County. We have people who are just being good neighbors. And there's plenty of opportunities to find places to show compassion on a local level. And there's also opportunities to show compassion on a global level. Even in our congregation, we have people, Hans and Caroline, who raise money through a garage sale to give to a pastor in Africa that doesn't have anything, or doesn't have a whole lot, can't afford books. God gives those connections for us to provide. So as we close, let's read verses 17 and 19. It says, "May his name endure forever, and his fame continue as long as the sun. May people be blessed in him, and all nations call him blessed. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who alone does wondrous things. Blessed be his glorious name forever. May the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen." This is all about God's glory. When we love people, it gives glory to God. When we show compassion, we go outside of ourselves. It gives glory to God. So let's pray. Band